All right, I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning meeting for November 1st, 2024. Roll call.
Harrell. Here. Budke.
Here.
Kleva.
Here.
Kuhn.
Here.
Lunsky.
Here.
Mattson.
Here.
Reichert.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
Wasvik.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Perfect. Reading and approval from the minutes from our last meeting, October 4th. Moved by Mr. Rell.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kuhn. Any further discussion on the minutes? Not seeing any hands. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meetings are approved as presented. Do we want to do it now? All right, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a few months, but Frank Matichek, we see him in the audience. He's served on this commission for many years, 36 to be exact, since 1987. Not everybody in this room was born even at that time, but with deepest gratitude, we want to say thank you for your 36 years of dedicated service, Frank. If we can get you to stand up and come on up to the podium. And I'm sure he'll have a few words, so thanks.
You know, it took me to get off the Planning and Zoning Commission for you guys to finally get a moratorium on signs. Because I think I told you at my last meeting that my very first meeting, my first agenda had 2 agenda items on signs, and my last meeting had 2 agenda items on signs. So anyway, that's all I can contribute. After 36 years, we didn't solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you for your service, Frank. All right. Well, that's great and a great service to Grand Forks. So thank you, Frank Matichek, again. Item 3, public hearings, finals, petitions, and minor changes.
3.1, ordinance to amend Chapter 18 Land Development Code sections as it relates to landscaping and buffer yard requirements. Section 180204, rules and definitions. Section 180309, landscaping. Section 18, Appendix A, buffer yard matrix. Section 18, Appendix B, buffer yard types and schedules.
Ms. Edwardson.
Thank you. Good evening. So last month we had requested a table in order to have a public input meeting and gather a little bit more information before we came back for final. We did have that meeting. Park District showed, Op Construction, who has a significant landscaping division, showed. Public Works, our Greenway specialist, and Commissioner Budke was also in attendance. The main outcomes of that was the buffer yard densities that we had proposed. Our Park District City Forester and his planting division manager had significant feedback on what grows in the area, what works better, what trees do thrive, which ones don't. And then how the buffer yard plantings, are they feasible or to survive and things like that. And so the feedback there was to reduce it even further. So your new amended proposals does show a few less trees per 100 feet. And the reason being that our major shade trees do choke each other out when they're planted too densely together. So we did center a large discussion around when we do want a natural tree line fence barrier, how do we structure it to ensure that we get a natural fence when we do want it? And that came in the form of the evergreens at a certain point of year of maturity. They do kind of build that, not necessarily at year 1, but within a respectable, reasonable amount of time, we do get that overall screening. So those changes were made, as well as some suggested improvements from them to this suggested planting list that we'll have on hand to hand out to folks. Our local contractors know what works and what doesn't. Those are mostly for our outside companies who come in and say, hey, what do you have? And then the other thing we talked about last month pretty heavily was that when to bring plans back for P&Z approval if needed. Had some good discussion with Commissioner Budke again on that, on a whole requirement of the buffer yards. The variance or anything like that would be based on, well, what does code say you should start with in terms of what use is next to what? And any discussions from that should really be based off that baseline code requirement. And so we removed that out of the flexibility section and just put a reference appeal, that if the developer doesn't agree to what any flexibility the city planner may reasonably be willing to give based off that baseline requirement, then they can go through an appeal process to planning and zoning. So we've written that in to ensure that it would come back to this body, not Board of Adjustments or anything like that. It would come back through here. So those would be the major changes we've made since last month. Looking for any feedback or approval tonight.
All right, anything from the commission? We do have a public hearing on this one, so maybe I'll go for that first. I'll open the public hearing. Anybody in the audience want to step up and address item 3.1, please do so at this time. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. I guess, Mr. Budke, you were on the committee. Everything go good?
Yeah, I agree. I thought it went very well. I really just listened. I think city staff did a great job of convening like the, call it technical experts, right? People that understand best, like you said, what grows and at what spacing, because that's really what these
Right.
buffer yards come down to. I did have one question for you, Andrea, which was clarification on the buffer yard location, because I feel like I think I asked a version of this question last time, but the buffer yard adjacent to like public right of way, and basically I'm looking in the revised version, buffer yard location, paragraph 3, and then C, buffer yards landscaping shall not be located on any portion of an existing or dedicated public or private street or right of way. So I think that's maybe. Could you just clarify that? Because I feel like last time we talked about if the city was going to plant, say, boulevard trees in, like in the berm in the right of way, that might count toward the obligation to provide a buffer yard, and this suggests not.
You're not wrong. That would be conflicting language. We do wish to, the trick we'll have to look at that is that we do not want anyone to plant in the right-of-way. We want that to be managed wholly by our Parks District
Right.
to ensure that because the maintenance of those falls to the Park District. And so the intent of that is to make sure if you're going above and beyond or whatever, that the berm suddenly isn't full of evergreen trees or things like that, right? They're meant to be spaced appropriately. So that's the intent of trying to keep others from planting within the berms. But we also do want to give credit for what the Park District is planting.
Okay.
And so we could specify that a bit better in terms of the Park District can plant and it can count. But
Yep.
you can also go to the Park District and request to plant a tree, but you have to get a permit. So there is a process to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But we can more clearly define, if you wish to, you must go through X.
Do you want to make that part of your motion, Mr.
Well,
Budke?
yeah, I guess I'm
If
thinking.
you're thinking of a motion, I guess.
Right. So, yeah, the draft text says shall not be located in any port. So, I mean, I think that gets to like what you're going for. The question, I guess, would then be if somebody wanted to count, maybe like perhaps a tree that's already planted in the right-of-way, could that count? And maybe that comes under the flexibility idea, in which case maybe the text is fine as is.
Yes. Yeah, we reference other things where if it exists on site, landscaping can count, if it meets the requirements and things like that. So under the flexibility, if you wanted to include it in the motion, we would add an additional to city planner has flexibility to count any boulevard trees.
Okay. Yes, I will make that motion. I think that'd be a good addition to spell that out.
So then we clarify it so it doesn't have to come back.
Right. So that'd be my motion to approve this with the one adjustment under, I don't know, I guess the flexibility section. Not sure how to word it exactly, but
We get the intent. Do we need exact language? Or,
Yeah, I think we can put something in there that say that, boulevard trees planted by the park district can count towards your required buffer yard. We can see if that's under flexibility or if that should probably be under permitted. So I think that's kind of where I would go. We'll figure out the best spot for that if that's all right, but we understand the intent. We'll put that, I'm not too sure flexibility is the right spot as opposed to what's permitted.
Okay.
As long as everybody's in agreement that those boulevard trees should count.
Right.
Right.
Okay, well, we got a motion on the floor. I'll second. Second by Ms. Sorrell. Any further discussion on this? Seeing no hands, I'll call for vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion 3-1 passes, carries. 3-2.
3-2, appeal of detailed development plan to appeal curb and gutter requirements for property located at 2950 Heartland Drive, Total Care Plumbing.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. I'm going to just kind of walk you through where we've been on this, and I don't know if the applicants, I'm not too sure I see him here. He could be potentially online. I'll start going through this and see if it's possible he did get the Zoom link. Maybe he's going to show up online here. Back in 2021, the Total Care Plumbing, which is along the Heartland Drive, which is that cul-de-sac that's in the corner of I-29 and 32nd. They got approval to go into that location. It's south of Heartland Condos, but north of the Egg Country Building and the new gas station that just went in there. They built a building, and we went through and did an approval of a site plan, and it met code, everything that they went through. They did also get a conditional use permit process because they were a contractor shop within a B3. That was a requirement at that time as well. As they built, some things didn't get completed on the site or were built a little bit differently than what we had understood that it was going to be built. And so along the western side, and he did change up a little bit what his plans were along the front here. He was going to have parking along the front, and that did go away. And ultimately, he didn't do where we're at today. He didn't do the curb and gutter, and he's asking for a request to have the variance where he wouldn't be allowed or would be permitted to not have curb and gutter on his site. It's a little odd because his site is built. There is an approved site plan that shows it on there. He's asking for that not to be a requirement. And so ultimately what he's asking for is this final site plan which shows curb and gutter removed along the west side, along this portion of the north. He's putting in these stalls here today, and then he would be asking for the curb and gutter to no longer be in this section either. So it's a little disjointed. It's a little tough to explain how he got to this. There's been some iterations, but ultimately his request is to not have that requirement for curb and gutter. If he's not here, it may be more appropriate, and if he's not online, it may be more appropriate to table this. It's not like he's going to be putting in curb and gutter this month. We're in the, obviously there's some snow out there, but it may be better to have him explain his reasons why he is where he's at on the project. And if he's not here, I certainly can't answer all of the reasons why, so.
Well, we can open up the public hearing, and he's not here to talk about it, then there we are.
Can I have a question?
Yeah, go ahead before we open up.
Does everyone else out in that area have curb and gutter?
So to the north is I'll jump to the air photo here. To the north is the Heartland condos. That's a little bit different setup. It's the private drives that are through there. And I don't know if anybody's been out there. This is certainly a different setup. It's a different feel. It's a private drive. Those do not.
Right.
What's going in right across the street here is what's called Heartland Caves. and those do. So that was recently approved. That is putting in curb and gutter. And then to the south, obviously, these have curb and gutter as well, and then Egg Country as well. So the development is nearly complete now in terms of the cul-de-sac. A lot of them do, just to the north doesn't.
Well,
So,
that's a
because that's
private
how it was
drive.
planned.
A private drive, we can't compare apples to oranges.
Right.
So,
But the site
So
plan.
what's
but
what is it because he doesn't want to pay for it, or is it I don't understand why.
I
Why
don't
that
know
would
if we
be?
have I'm not too sure the ultimate reason. I mean, he could certainly answer that better than me because I'm not too sure all of his reasons why, but it could be a cost piece. But ultimately, I mean, as I go out there and take a look at the site, it's going to be tough to put curb and gutter in now at this point because some of his elevations are set now as well. And
I don't know about tabling this because did he know the meeting was tonight?
Well, he made the application to us. We
Yeah,
had talked
okay.
about a first Wednesday. I know we did a confirmation that it was today. I think he was surprised. It was like, oh, do I need to be there? So that was
Sure.
yeah.
And that's fine, people aren't always here for that, but I guess I would not be supportive of his request if we vote on it tonight, because that was a requirement, it was in the plan, that's what was approved, and that's what belongs there.
how do we go back to the neighbors and say,
Yeah,
oh,
I
you
mean,
don't
you
need
just
this?
can't do that.
Well, and those 6 spaces that he wants to add, they're already in.
Oh,
Yeah, it's part of the site plan, so he knows that he's aware that if this isn't approved, obviously he's got to put in, but where those 6 stalls are going, I'll go back to that site
I
plan.
drove out there today, I'm pretty sure those 6 spots are already in.
Yeah, he's not asking for those not to have curb and gutter because ultimately that wasn't part of the red piece here. As he expands this, he'll have to put those in and to get to where even his drain piece is at. But so the red portion this is the area that he's asking for that to be removed. It was where those red pieces are. Oh,
Okay.
I apologize, there might be a little piece here as well. I'm kind of
Well,
looking at Haley, she's been working with.
I tell
me
you
as well.
what, I'll open the public hearing, just in case somebody's online. Can't really tell who's all online and in the audience. So anybody in the audience would like to step up and address item 3.2, please do so at this time. Okay, gave it ample time. I don't hear anybody. With that, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Anybody else, Mr. Reichert?
and second.
Moved and second to deny. Mr. Budke.
Just a quick question, Ryan. So we mentioned how the lots to the north don't have curb and gutter. Could you explain to me the difference here between private drives and I guess just a regular parking lot in this context?
So, yeah, this was and this was the way it was planned. They did an inverted, I think it was an inverted crown. So I think they did, or maybe it's called valley gutter, I can't remember. But they're draining, the way that this was set up, they're having everything drained to the center and then the water gets taken care of that way. I'd pull up the stormwater drains and where they have them, but since they're private, they won't really show up. But they have all the water drains to the center, as I understand it, on this development, and then it carries out that way. So it was just a different setup on that. And it was originally what they asked for permission for that setup originally when they came through and did this kind of amended setup. So it's just really hard to describe how that's different than the rest of them, just because you're dealing with kind of a condo situation here.
Right.
With this one to the north, it's just a little bit different overall setup.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Grasser.
And maybe just pointing out, I think on those Heartland condos on the north side, so much of it is frontage. It's not like you have grass and stuff that you're, providing a barrier to it. It'd be hard to put much curb and gutter into that. It'd be very just piecemeal and small little pieces because, again, as you look at it, large percentage of that perimeter is an entrance into a.
Well, and Heartland was a site plan that was brought before us and approved and done, stamped. That's moved on. We also have a site plan here that was brought before everybody, city, engineering staff, us, everything went through. It's not built according to that. His neighbors built according to that with curb and gutter. Kind of going to be pretty tough for us to say, do what you want at this point, I feel.
Yeah, and would you agree that typically in that condo type situation, there isn't curb and gutter?
Yeah, most of them, I think even when I've gone, West Fargo has a similar setup to these, and it's set up the same way that Heartland condo is.
Sure, and even in like residential areas, there's not curb and gutter when you go into the different
Townhomes, yeah.
association type situation. So I think it's just more than anything, it's totally different type of development.
Okay. Any further discussion, Mr. Reichert?
Did I hear you say that there actually sort of is gutter? I mean, that everything flows to the middle and that, so the water is collected in the middle of the street and then, so it's just kind of the opposite, instead of going to the edges, it goes to the middle? So we really do have gutter in the.
We have drainage.
Yes.
It's a different way to collect that stormwater.
All right.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, call for a vote. All those in favor of denying?
Did we get a second?
Yeah, we did. Megan, Mr. Reichert, and Miss Sandy. All those in favor of denying signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Denied unanimously. 3-3.
3-3, plat of Excel Energy re-subdivision located at 1206 Fifth Avenue South with street and highway ordinance dedication.
All right,
Miss Johnson.
thank you. So you saw this one last month along with a request to vacate 2 storm sewer easements. That vacation only goes through once, but you'll see the replat twice since there's a right-of-way dedication. As you may recall, the replat is essentially to combine 4 different parcels into one, so that they can build a more centrally located building on site. The replat also includes the dedication of a new storm sewer easement to better align with the existing line, as well as some right-of-way dedication on the east side to include some sidewalk that actually partially lies on their property today. Staff's recommending approval. Any questions?
All right. Any questions for Miss Johnson before we open the public hearing? Not seeing any. I'll open the public hearing. Anybody in the audience, step up and address item 3-3. Do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Lunsky. Second by Mr. Mattson. Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approved, same sign. 3-3 carries unanimously. 3-4.
3-4, replat of Lot 1, Block 1, Hakey, 3rd Edition, located at 2200 block of 11th Avenue South.
Mr. Brooks.
It's either Hickey or hockey. We've had lots of debates on this, but
Hockey's with an O.
this is the Vale Circle project. Through the years, probably not to get too deep of the weeds here, but they've had some stormwater issues through the years, and this is a project. This is part of a project where the city has worked. They've gotten the funding to take care of that problem. Engineering, Public Works have all worked, and it's up in this corner here. We're going to get a lift station to kind of assist on getting that taken care of. Carmen with our Public Works Department is here, can certainly answer any questions specifically on that project. But in terms of what's going on here today, we're going to be platting a piece within that townhome development. There's a shared piece there. There's this Lot B that we're going to create, and that's where the city's going to purchase that property and put on the required infrastructure that's going to help alleviate the problems there. And as I understand it, Townhome Association's been good to work with, and there's been an agreement on what that will cost the city to get that, and then working with them to fix the problem moving forward, so.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Mr. Brooks before we move on to the public hearing? Seeing none, anybody in the audience like to step up and address item 3-4, do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to commission. Mr. Reichert. Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Ms. Sandy. Any further discussion? Call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 3-4, motion carries unanimously. 3-5,
3-5, approval of development signs.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. We've refined the presentation that we had a little bit last time. I think we had 15 signs when we went through last time. So we're going to be asking for approval tonight, and then I'll go on to city council as per city code. The signs that we're looking at, there's 13 of them. We've got the Grand Valley signs. Holy crap, what happened there? I'm probably not supposed to say that. So this is Grand Valley here. This is south of 62nd. It's the new development that's going in. The city does have infrastructure that's gone in there, and I believe there's potential that there are some lots being sold in this area. The signs that we're proposing to go up, one will be here in this location, and the other one's here along Washington. 69th is going to have a piece coming across here. The sign will show the development and then have that other information that we talked about last time. So those would be two signs there. The other one's Prairie 2nd. We're looking for a sign here off of Washington. There's a main 59th avenue that comes across here. Cherry Street's another kind of entrance into this development. Looking for a sign in that location. And then the third one's kind of coming from the east because we have development in here. This is Cromwell Drive, some lots going in there. And then this is what we call Prairie 7th, Wren Drive, Hummel Court. There's a lot of new homes going in that area. So looking for something along the east side there. So we had to have 3 signs on that one. Here's JR's PUD. Here's the Discovery School. We're looking for a sign up here on the north. This is going to be where that new Subaru is going to be located. Here's 43rd. We recently did the Gate City Bank location in this area here. 43rd is going to be coming across. I think last time we showed 45th as a road, but this 43rd is that's where that light is. We think there's going to be more traffic in terms of getting everybody kind of seeing where that is. And then we're looking for another one along the west side there. Southern Estates. This is, today we got 41st here. Thompson Homes as homes that are going to be going in this location. We have another piece here where 44th is coming across, and we have some open lots here. So a lot of these are multifamily. So it's kind of getting people aware that multifamily could go there. So that'd be another sign there. And then since the Southern Estates is so large, we went with one sign here. I think last time we had 2 signs, but this 43rd, that doesn't enter into the neighborhood. If you remember right, we cul-de-sac that. So we thought if we put one on this corner here, that could kind of get through a lot of those. And as we discussed last time, I think most of these are going to probably have homes. Even there's some starting this winter. I think they're putting in some basements on a lot of these. So the whole Southern Estates development's very large. 90% of it's probably developed, but really trying to get some of these last pieces so they're identified as what they'll be on those vacant parcels. Kanowski's was another one we kind of looked at and kind of said, boy, we have 90% of this development done. So really trying to get everybody aware that this is a commercial piece that's here. We don't have anything on the books, what's going to be put there, but just making sure that everybody's aware. Otherwise, for the most part, the Sylvia Circle here, there's a lot of development that's already going in there. And even if you look at Magnolia Drive, I don't know if there's that much of Magnolia Drive even left. And so you're really looking at a fairly developed site, but just looking to get those vacant parcels identified. So that's why we looked at a sign here off of Washington and here off of 62nd. And that's just north of Grand Valley. Here again is what that sign would look like. We're looking at 4x8 sheets. Our staff report talked about 30 days from when the final approval goes in. I did talk with somebody today. They said you might want to do 60 days because we're going to be coming, just to make sure that they have the time and the supplies to get those in. And whether it's end of year or end of January, I think we'd still be good. So that might be a good thing. What's that? This still, yeah. Yeah. And, yeah.
I have a question. Brian, if you go back to, I believe it's the Crary. Did I turn my microphone? Back to the Crary. One, where you talked about Cromwell.
Oh, sure.
So there's two different developers there.
Yes.
So are you going to have one sign for Thompson Homes that's doing everything south of 59th, and then one sign for Crary that's doing the Cromwell and those ones that line along Belmont? Just a thought.
It'll all be on, they're all under the same PUD, so all of that information's the same
Okay.
between them.
Okay.
So.
They just need to,
You know, the interesting thing is who's going to, because I think a lot of the developers, when I talked to a representative of Crary, he had mentioned this is a good thing, you know, we'll actually use it for advertising.
Yeah.
He thought it was a good idea.
Okay.
But it is interesting that, you know, which one's going to put their information on there and how that map would look.
Right.
Because really it's identifying those. So it is I'm not too sure. We weren't looking to identify which one would put it on.
Okay.
Originally, this was a Crary development. They did sell that land, but I wasn't identifying who would. The big thing here to me is these are those vacant parcels too. These are multifamily down here along 62nd. I don't know if they're going to stay that way, but identifying those as what could potentially go there, I think is important. Yeah, that's
well, and
important.
that's been that was our topic of conversation that kind of got us
Yeah.
to this point, right? So.
Yes. And those still are owned by Crary. So those two pieces, I think having Crary's name on those would be important. And it's potential that you may get somebody to say, you know what, I want that and I want to do this on those parcels. And then we maybe end up amending a sign fairly quick.
Mr. Reichert?
Okay.
Have you spoken with the developers about the locations of these signs?
I have pushed out that information to both Crary and Useldinger. I didn't get feedback on either one, so I assume, my thought is if I didn't hear anything back that they were good with that, but, you know, that's not necessarily always the truth. But I had that conversation. I happened to run into Russa and mention it to him, and like I said, he was receptive, he understood, and he actually saw this could be a benefit to them, so.
Okay, was that, got through your slides?
Yes, that was it.
So the bottom one is what we're approving them to do, and we're approving all the locations of the signs, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I'm just gonna tell you, I want them to get the bases in the ground now, because the next thing we'll hear is that there's frost and they can't get them in. Because we already heard that you can't pour concrete anymore today. Much concrete did you guys pour today? I know you poured a lot. I'd like
We
to
would
see-
be good with them on skids. I mean, a lot of realtor signs get moved around.
Doesn't matter,
I think that
know
would make sense. They wouldn't have to necessarily pour to put these into place, so I could see
Right.
that as a
Dig a hole or
potential.
whatever, skids or whatever they're gonna do, I want them done.
Yeah.
I'd like to really see them done, because we passed this 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and here we are again, so I'd like to see them done. I guess we can open the public hearing. Anybody in the audience want to address this item, please step up to the microphone. Seeing no one, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Reichert?
Move approval will have to be up by December 1st.
Second by Mr. Lunsky, moved by Mr. Reichert. Any further discussion? Mr. Budke?
Yeah, just a question on, I'm in favor of all of this, but I'm just curious, like, the ordinance has already been on the books for a while, so, like, what are we approving exactly?
Yeah, so the ordinance actually says that planning commission, city council actually need to approve where those signs go.
I see.
So that's why I'm kind of saying, here's the locations, because that was in code. And so, yeah, that's kind of why.
Okay.
Our intent for the future is when a plat goes in, wrap that in at that time, just so when a large development like Grand Valley comes in, we just say, here's what here's where that sign should go. What it looks like is actually in code, so what you're seeing here was actually what was part of the original ordinance, so.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
Yep, so we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 3-5 passes unanimously. Communications and preliminary approvals.
4-1, plat of University Park Second Edition, located at 320 North 25th Street and 2100 Fifth Avenue North, with street and highway ordinance dedication.
Good
Miss
evening.
Anderson.
Again, I should say. We've looked at this one a couple different times. This one was one that our staff surveyor did do, and when it came to recording at the county recorder's office, we did find a unique scenario in this very small rectangular piece in the plat is somehow still under state ownership. And so I haven't been able to trace it back into how terms that happened or what, but any state ownership does have to go through the state sale process, becomes a whole hoopla, right? So we have modified the plat to remove that. Park District will address that if need be. Still retain part of the park. And then we also found that 6th Avenue North, as well as a portion of 25th Street here to the side, had not been, had a right-of-way dedication. So that's why this one is coming back. The map is actually changed to remove that lot and show those right-of-way dedications, as well as the ordinance to dedicate the right-of-way officially. So asking for approval tonight with those corrections.
Anything for Ms. Edwardsson? Questions, comments? Mr. Reichert?
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Ms. Sandy. Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 4-1 carries unanimously. 4-2. Mr.
Four-
Brooks? Oh,
Sorry.
My fault.
4-2, ordinance to amend zoning map, Odin's Hobby Shop PUD, 124 Belmont Road.
Mr. Brooks?
The applicant on this one is asked to have it tabled. They're still working through some options, and so he's asked for it to be tabled, and he said by next month he'd have it ready.
Mr. Reichert?
Move to table.
Second by Ms. Sandy. There is no discussions on table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 4-2 is tabled till next month. Or till we see it again. 4-3.
4-3, ordinance and resolution to amend the Grand Forks Comprehensive Plan to include the Grand Forks, East Grand Forks, 2050 Street and Highway Plan update.
Mr. Brooks?
I will introduce Terry Kuba with the MPO. This is the time every 5 years we go through this process, but this will be a presentation. I think I'll let her introduce from here, but Terry Kuba.
Thank you. The presentation will be from our consultant, Jason Carby with HDR. He's online, and as Ryan said, this is something that we update every 5 years. It's this particular element is our street and highway plan. I believe in June, we brought forward a bicycle and pedestrian plan as well, which is also part of, group them all together with our transit development plan, and this is all part of our metropolitan transportation plan. But I will let Jason Carby start. I believe he's trying to share his screen.
All right, can you see it?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Nice to be with you all tonight. So going to really quick go over what's in the plan, talk a little bit about our public engagement summary, talk about the differences between what's the range of alternatives and good ideas that we have, and talk a little bit about what we call the fiscally constrained plan, and then kind of wrap up with let Terry kind of talk about next steps. So in the street and highway plan, we've got several chapters, and they'll walk through very high level of each of them. The first one just talks about concepts with the MPO in chapter 1, the introduction, talks about what the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is, the role of the MPO, and some of its core work products. We, in chapter 2, talked about goals and objectives, and how they aligned with a lot of the federal and state planning goals that are set forward, and how we kind of frame those based on all of the public input that we had throughout the plan. And we really focused on 5 areas here, with having an efficient and reliable system, a safe system, a connected and accessible system, a preserved and maintained system, making sure we take care of what we've got today, and having a system that's sustainable and resilient. So Chapter 3 talks about plan engagement. We had a range of different engagement techniques, public open houses, stakeholder meetings with kind of focused groups, online engagement, with the MPO boards, we talked a lot, had surveys that we administered. We did have engagement structured around 3 different milestones, issues and goals. When we started talking about strategies or ideas or what might be good ideas to put in the plan. And then, came to the public, I think it was in September, with the draft plan, and we're looking for some ideas and people's preferences on that. I had those public open houses and stakeholders, did a range of online surveys at each of the open house events, did talk with city councils on both sides of the river, and again, engage with the MPO boards throughout plan development process. The 4th chapter is community profile. This is really kind of a high-level discussion of trends and how all of the different communities in the region, including Grand Forks, are growing. Housing, employment, commuting, things like that. Chapter 5 was a kind of a high level, kind of where are we now? How does the system operate? You can see there's a range of perspectives. I'm going to touch on a couple of them really highly here. We talked about where we've got current levels of congestion during the peak hour. So you can see we've got some in Grand Forks, level service D, level service E, and then safety is a really key area that we really focus on in transportation planning, is really trying to give try to see if we can move towards 0 fatalities, 0 serious injury crashes, on our system. And so looking at the data for bicycle and pedestrian crashes, where we've got the most crashes that occur, and so on, and going through all that data. Chapter 6 is really looking at future trends and needs. So kind of Chapter 5 set where we are today. Chapter 6 was kind of looking, how are we growing? A lot of this incorporated the comprehensive land use plan that you guys recently completed. Took a lot of that growth that we're anticipating, particularly in the southern and some of the western areas of Grand Forks. So this is kind of where that plan identified growth in households. And then this one kind of identifies where we're anticipating growth in jobs. And so what the plan really does is takes all that, looks out to the year 2050, and tries to anticipate, how is that going to affect how we travel as a community, and start looking at, with our computer model, how do traffic volumes increase between today and 2050. And you can see those kind of big red, kind of wider lines are the ones where we're anticipating up to 10,000 more cars a day traveling. So down with the new potential interchange down at 47th Avenue South, South Columbia Road, South Washington, start seeing a lot of that growth down on 32nd Avenue and up on Gateway, corridors like that. So that's kind of setting the framework for, again, and then seeing if we don't do anything beyond, what we have programmed today, what is congestion going to look like in the future? And so kind of got a snapshot of increased congestion potentially in 2050 if we don't make some of these investments in the street and highway system. So Chapter 7 looked at street and highway strategies. What are the types of things that we should consider including in the street and highway plan and the metropolitan transportation plan? Looked at, if you think about back to those goal areas, we really wanted to frame the strategies around, maintaining the street system that we've got today is one of our highest strategies. But, can we take our current corridors and make them operate more efficiently, more safely? Some of our mature corridors like 32nd Avenue South, Washington Street, they're probably as wide as they're ever going to be. So, we probably aren't adding a whole lot of lanes in the future, but how can we make incremental improvements to make them operate more efficiently and more safely? And then some of the growth areas will anticipate new streets and widenings, potential new bridge crossings, and then paved gravel roads where the city is growing into the community. And so with that was a range of all of the different options that kind of came up during the plan. And you can see we've got a range of, again, those types of strategies we talked about, identified some potential corridor widenings down in those south and west growth areas, operations projects on some of those more mature corridors I talked about, potential widenings in a few places, potential new bridge crossings in a few locations there, and some targeted kind of intersection type improvements were on the list of things being considered for the plan. And the next chapter really focused on funding, because again, one of the federal requirements of what the MPO needs to do is have a fiscally constrained plan. And so really looked at all the different federal, state, and local revenues and looked at the system that we have today and kind of evaluate, what are our basic requirements for maintaining our system, and does that leave enough money for us to consider expanding the system? And so essentially, when we did that analysis and looked at all of the needs to maintain our existing system from a fiscal constraint perspective, this is what we're going to call a state of good repair plan. So all of the recommendations that we include in this kind of federally approved plan are essentially our maintenance type projects. So you see that blue box talks about fiscally constrained list of maintenance projects, and again, focusing on keeping our streets in good condition. And then we've got what we call a vision list or an illustrative project list. These are some good ideas, things that we're going to need as we move towards, future and all this growth. But we will need to identify, additional sources of funding for those projects. And so really quick, the one thing that this plan does anticipate is projects that are in the current MPO Transportation Improvement Program or projects that are in the city's capital improvement program are considered what we call committed. And so those are kind of assumed to be givens. And so, for instance, that 47th Avenue South interchange is going to begin the kind of design and environmental process here in the near term. Funding has been identified for that first phase. The grade separation at 42nd and Demers, that big grant that the city won earlier this year. And then, a couple of those other projects are considered committed projects. So we're kind of building off of these, assuming these are kind of givens. And so using the source of funding that's kind of federal in nature, but it comes from the state for the urban roads system, the city of Grand Forks, we kind of work through, again, understanding that, maintaining our streets is our highest priority. So the projects that we're showing on this slide for the short term, the midterm, and the long term in green, blue, and red are those identified that we have sufficient, federal and local sources to kind of fund between today and 2050. And then we have a list of kind of needs that we'll have through that same period that we're calling illustrative or basically outside the fiscal constraint, but we'll need to kind of find some funding sources to fund those. And so you can see those are essentially, reconstruction projects. CPR stands for concrete pavement repair. We do have a project to pave a gravel road on South 48th Street between 32nd and 47th as a part of that interchange. And also, there's another funding source called the Urban Grant, and then we kind of, that one's a little bit more discretionary, so they'll need to compete across the state with other communities across the state. And so identified some of the streets in the downtown area that would be kind of first in line for Grand Forks for those projects. And then also, and I won't go through too much in depth, but these are state of North Dakota projects, and so they have another funding source, essentially keeping some of those, state roads in a state of good repair. And so those are shown on these slides. I'll kind of move through those. And then finally, wrapped up with looking at, how are the projects that are in this in the plan, how are they impacting environmental justice populations? So you can see all the different categories, making sure that we're not disproportionately impacting low income, minority, seniors, disabled, limited English proficiency, or no vehicles available populations. And then one of the big things, obviously, the MPO also needs to be federally compliant. And so we did kind of compare the plan elements to each of the federal requirements as well. And so Terry, I'll turn it back to you.
This is part of the Grand Forks as well as East Grand Forks' comprehensive plan. So we are asking for the approval of this plan, and as well as we will be going forward to City Council to as well as to present these plans as well and give further information. If there's any questions.
Mr. Reichert?
I have a question. 32nd Street seems to be a problem over and over again, and I guess I was confused on whether or not that is one of the priorities. I mean, it's got to be one of the busiest roads in town, and every spring it's a mess. Is that covered in here?
It is to the extent that the state is looking at what they're doing. I believe we have some concrete repair work going on. We have some going on in our transportation improvement program as well currently. I believe it's in the year 25 now.
Yeah, it looked like it was long-term.
Yeah, they've got some short-term and some long-term. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry, go ahead.
There's several times where they will go back and do some sort of work, some sort of improvement, whether it's just making sure that the concrete is in good repair I don't think we have a full reconstruction of that so far. I haven't seen anything or heard anything from North Dakota DOT.
So that's covered by the DOT, not by the
Correct.
city? And are they impacted by this street and highway plan at all?
They are part of the planning process so that we know what they are planning to do into the next 50, well, into those time bands. But they give us what they will give us for information.
But we must have, Al, we must have input into what their priorities are, don't we?
We do. Are you going back to the 30-second question?
Well, I mean, just generally, but I mean, let's talk about it in the 30-second question. That will probably give us the answer to both.
The 30-second it's kind of a convoluted process, unusual for the rest of the system. So what I'm going to tell you is kind of a one-off. Going back in time, we had 32nd in for repair, and then we had it in for reconstruction, probably, I mean, kind of in the mid-20s here, right? The DOT started looking at it as they started doing their really early look at the traffic flows. And they said, we can't reconstruct it the way it is now because we don't have enough lanes. And they had a goal as to how much the service level that they needed to have performed for that state highway. So let's add 6 lanes. Couldn't meet the performance goals. Let's add 8 lanes, couldn't meet the performance goals. That has to do with all the intersection turning movements. Anyway, that started leading then down to a path. We can't solve 32nd on 32nd. We need to think outside the box and do something different. That's where the 47th Avenue interchange came in. They started looking at, how can we relieve that traffic on 32nd so we can get a manageable number of lanes, ultimately with the goal of reconstructing, right? And so that process took us to where we are now, where we've, at least locally, we've approved the 47th interchange. The DOT is on board with that, but the funding cycles now push that off, and they need to have that operating before they can come back and rebuild 32nd. So it puts the whole timeline really in an ugly black box, but everybody recognized the DOT is fully on board. It needs to be reconstructed. The question is going to be, we can't take it offline until we have a substitute for it, so to speak, to handle some of that traffic. So the solution on the reconstruction side is quite a few years off. That's why it doesn't show up on like any of the short term, because in the short term action is the interchange to ultimately get to the long-term solution.
Well, and I guess I'm not talking so much about traffic and, how busy it is, more just that it doesn't seem to be, something appears to be structurally wrong that it deteriorates so much every spring. I mean, I'm more worried about maintenance than, I understand we might not be able to add lanes or anything, but let's make the lanes that are there drivable.
We've, excellent questions, and we've bandied that around even amongst other officials in North Dakota. We're seeing that our asphalt pavements overlays are not lasting as long as they used to. Why is that? We're not sure we have a good answer. We think it, we understand the mechanisms, it's freeze thaw and it's moisture and it's those kind of things, but what's changed now, they used to last longer. When we did an overlay 30 years ago, it would last 15 or 20 years. Now they're not. We've been surprised on Washington. I'm sure you guys all remember that. We've been surprised on 32nd. You look at it in the fall and it looks like, yeah, it should probably go another couple, 3 years, right? I mean, that's when you apply your past experience to a lot of that, it says, yeah, we need to get at it, but it's not an emergency. Next spring, it's an emergency. And it's not a progressive failure. It's a sudden
Catastrophic.
I won't say total failure, but I mean, the potholes still probably only represent, 5% of the total surface area, but it still makes it undrivable, right? And we think part of the end of it, whether you call it climate change or get away from the political stuff, but we think we're seeing more freeze thaws, and we're starting to incorporate that into our thinking. We've already talked with the DOT about incorporating that. We're putting these things on a 10-year cycle now instead of what otherwise was like a 15-year cycle, said hopefully we can kind of stay ahead of it. Quite frankly, I'm not sure 10 years is going to quite make it. It seems like it was nip and tuck. This 32nd was on about a 10-year cycle, or 11. And it's got to do with, just putting more and more freeze thaws. It may have to do with the fact that the more times you do an overlay onto an old base concrete, just doesn't perform as well. And that's why for us, economically, we have to reconstruct it. We can't be doing mill and overlays when these things are only lasting, 8 or 9 years. It just financially doesn't make any sense. So I think we and the DOT are all in agreement as to where it needs to go. It's just a matter of getting there. To get to that point, we got to go through a couple more maintenance rounds. And we are adjusting the cycle of those maintenance so that we can get better performance before they get into that failure mode.
So is there anything we can do in this plan, or is everything there that's in this plan, to reprioritize it or move it up, or help you, help DOT, help whoever? I know that these plans have some sort of impacts on that sort of thing. Would it be helpful to you if we moved some of these things up to short-term or mid-term or something like that?
I don't think from your side there's anything, because a lot of this gets adjusted in Bismarck, quite frankly, sometimes when they get into that level of refinement. I think the thing that you can do is work with us, understand if and when we come in for amendments and we go, geez, we need to move this project from this year up to this year, kind of understanding what's kind of driving that. I think that's where you guys can really be helpful in just, again, understanding those, what's driving the need for some of those changes, and just support those movements as we're trying to adjust to the situations in the field.
Okay. And is there what's the deadline on approving this?
We have the final deadline that we have as an MPO for approving the full Metropolitan Transportation Plan is January of 2024. We are a little early in that process, but we do have to go through two approval processes.
Yeah, you're not
for
very early.
Grand Forks.
Right.
So we are
this month and
working.
next for us.
We are working with everybody and moving forward with as much information as we have at the time we have it, so.
Any other questions, anybody? I guess, Mr. Budke, go ahead.
Just a couple of quick comments. Just on the discussion here and looking through the document. One was just on this, the measure of the level of service. It seems to me there might be sort of a contradiction in some of the stated goals in here, right? Like there's this idea of like free
flow?
Flowing traffic, right? Like a high level of service by the graphic in here means all hours of the day, free-flowing speed of traffic, and then you also have this safety goal, and you mentioned Vision Zero. It seems to me that, and there's some data to back this up since the pandemic year, when we have like a street design that is moving traffic at those free-flowing speed, that leads to higher fatalities across the board. That the most dangerous thing is the speed. And so I'm not sure how it fits in here exactly. I just want to point that out, that there is a contradiction in the way that this whole process seems to go about evaluating and scoring projects and some of the goals.
And because we've divided our Metropolitan Transportation Plan into 3 elements, which is the bike, ped, and transit, and this is the street and highway, we're focused on the streets and the highways and the roads themselves. We do have information in our bike and ped plan that hopes to, kind of bring in that element of we need to look at a roadway holistically or complete streets. The city of Grand Forks has a complete streets policy. So as projects go forward, they're looking at it on an individual level, and they're trying to make sure they're getting all those elements in as they're moving forward with those projects. That's kind of the best we can plan for, and working with the engineers to, move towards that zero death type of situation. So, but your biggest thing is that recognizability of bikes, pedestrians, all modes moving forward through, to get from point A to point B.
Okay. My other sort of related comment was, Mr. Grasser, you mentioned in your description of 32nd, right, how you can't add enough lanes to solve this issue in the model, and thinking of other ways to do that. Another way would be just to reduce the number of car trips that happen in our city and the way that we go about developing them. So I think maybe add that to the list of outside the box solutions. I think that seems to be it's a trickier one to solve, and I wish that we were integrating them a little bit better than having them in sort of separate elements. So.
And right now on our website is an executive summary of all the plans all together and all the projects, including the bike and pedestrian and transit projects that are all inside, listed in one short-term, mid-term, long-term type of thing. So.
Okay. Last comment is just when we're talking about all the different transportation modes, and we talk about the investment that's made in these, right? Like the bike and pedestrian element versus the streets and highways one. I mean, it's massive, incredible investment in the street and highway element as compared to the other. So that's my comment. Thank you.
That's perfect. It's also minus 40 here. All right, so anything else? I guess we're looking for a motion. Moved by Mr. Reichert. Second by, I think, Ms. Sorrell. I'm going to beat you out, Jamie. Any further discussion? Not seeing any hands. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 4-3 passes
Thank you.
unanimously. Thank you, and thank Mr. Kirby.
Thank you.
All right, with that, reports from the planning department.
So I think on your desks, there's some monthly updates that we gave. We kind of promised that we're going to try to provide you guys with some more info. There is some these are the site plans that were done for the whole year, since you guys haven't been getting those up until now. And Haley and Sierra have been, they kind of compiled that list, and they can certainly go through that if you guys want to do that. I know our our time is getting later, but we're about an hour in, but they're certainly able to go through that. We'll maybe just have them do that from their seats if that works for you guys.
Unless
Or if there's questions on any of them.
Unless the commission would like to review this on their own
Yeah.
and come back to it. I mean, it's the first we've seen it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yep. We're flexible.
Is that good? And we could.
Yes, I agree.
Because most of these we probably remember. Okay, we'll do that then. Billboard 5-2.
So hopefully everybody's aware by now, but the city council did put a moratorium on billboards. There was the ability to do, I want to say about 5 more. So those are now capped. We're done for now because this moratorium's in place, no new ones can be built. Other than the ones that were already permitted, because there's a couple of them that actually already had permits. So with that, we are in the process of going through, we're looking at safety, and that's kind of the first thing, and then we'll be working through a process, and we'll keep you updated as we go through that. So we're working with the city attorney on what that process is going to look like, and it may involve an update on a monthly basis as we go through. So with that, I don't have a whole lot of other information, just because we're, not that I'm being coy or anything, we just still working through what our steps are going to be, just so you're aware.
Perfect. Mr. Rao?
I have a question. So the one down by Marco's Pizza is somewhat functioning, one side's functioning and the other side's not. It may have changed in the last few days, but for about a week it wasn't functioning. And then I remember I do recall, I believe, when we approved them, we asked that they finish off the sides, and none of the sides are finished off, like you can see right through. Has anybody else noticed that?
I'll check on that, because they were.
All 3 of them,
I think we called them louvers. They were supposed to be something that blocked the light from getting through onto that backside, so I'll do some checking on that.
Yeah, and I mean, things break, I certainly understand that, but I was just curious if it was done or if they've also just stopped because
Yeah.
it's not like they're gonna have to tear them down, I get that, but.
Correct, yeah.
So they just, again, I think they just left sort of unfinished.
I guess I got a comment.
Yeah.
So I think we need to kind of go about putting some rules in about how they do some of the construction of some of these signs. The screening that they're doing on the backside is completely visible from the active side of the screens, and I think they look horrible. It's sticking out past the sign. Some of the structures look very massive and the screens look very small on there. I don't know, we just have to figure out what we're gonna allow them to do and not to do with these digital billboards. I like them, but some of the things they're doing, I don't think are in good taste, so. It's part of if there's a.
I think it would help their
Group that we'd like to
cause
get
to
together?
get more of them if they did them, because we did go through that, and we asked them to do them, and remember Mr. Reichert asking for some fence in the front, and everybody had their own thing they wanted on these, but didn't
Just need
seem to
come up with
happen.
some rules and guidelines and some detail.
Correct.
Well, again, it probably just goes back to make sure you build what we've approved,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, agreed. Great comment. Any other business? From any-
Nothing from staff.
From commission? You're approved, my friend. All right.
Yes.
All those in favor? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.